Okay, let's see if I can share the screen. Okay. Some things we gotta go over first. Oh yeah, let me stop sharing real quick, and then you're gonna hear me talk for a while. So there's some terms you have to understand when talking about UI, and it refers to like the different types. So the two biggest types is diegetic and non-diegetic UI. Diegetic, essentially, like the Greek term is to narrate, but it's when when you're telling a story and you're narrating it, that is considered to be in diegesis. It's just a fancy way of saying UI that's in the game versus UI that's out of the game, right? So game players, the actual characters in the game, know about the elements. So if there's a save point or something, that's a diegetic UI element. Non-diegetic means that the user, the player in the real world, can interact with these elements, but not the game player. So those are kind of the two main different types of UI elements. Within those, you have different ways to do those two different types. There's spatial, which is like in the game world, but it doesn't have to be interactable. So say, in Call of Duty or something, you can see outer like highlight of a character, so that's a spatial element that you don't necessarily interact with, but you see it in the game. Another one is meta. It exists in the game world, but the players don't seem to notice. So one example of that is kind of rain falling on the camera view, like in a racing game. So the car doesn't really know that it's raining, but you see that the conditions are different because there's rain hitting the camera view. And so in Unity, they have what's called canvas. So that's pretty much the over umbrella of all the things that you'll be doing with Unity. And they have three different types of canvas that you can use. The screen space, which is the overlay, which is pretty much your standard heads-up display right on top of the scene. You have the screen space of the camera, which is placed right before the camera's view. So it's kind of in view of the camera, but right before the player's view, if it makes sense. We'll go over it. And then world space, which is pretty much anything goes. UI elements are literally within the world. And as you can imagine, there are better types of canvas for different UI element types. Like for non-diegetic UI, it's probably better to use an overlay canvas, right? Because it's not in the real game world. It's just better to use a HUD for the player in the real world to use those elements, right? A good use for the world space is diegetic, right? Because that's the player in the game seeing these elements and being able to interact with it. So again, it's just some terminology to understand when talking about UI elements, in game versus quote unquote out of the game. Okay. Is there any questions about that so far? I know it's a bit confusing. There's a lot of different types. There's a lot of different terminology. Now we're just gonna swing on into Unity here. always lose my chat. I always lose it. Sorry, just give me 1 second here. Cool. All right. So this is the project that we had from last week, right? They had our little character. I'm not really going to do much with this. I'm just using it so that I can load, the quote unquote game with the menu. So first and foremost, I need to go in my scenes. I'm going to create a new scene. Scene. Menu. And like we did before, we're going to go into build settings and make sure that we throw in main menu scene, and we want that to be the first thing, and then our game scene to be the second thing. Okay. So let's open up the main menu. Sure. Okay, yeah, there's nothing here. It's just a main camera. So I'm gonna right click, UI canvas. Oh, actually before that, let me remove this. Say if you just wanted to create a UI element of text, it'll automatically create that canvas for you. Pretty much any UI element needs to be in a canvas. That's an important thing to know. So yeah, that's pretty much your first element. You can see it right in the center there. There's your text. With this little reticle here, you can anchor it to different areas of the screen. I say different areas of the canvas. But again, we'll start messing with these soon. You can center it up, a whole bunch of different things. So for our canvas, oh, sure. I'll go ahead and remove it. So right click, UI. You can make an empty canvas, or if you already know what you want, you can just create a text, and that'll automatically create the canvas and be parented to it. So once we go back to our canvas, we have some properties here. One thing you want to make sure is that your render mode is an overlay. These are the different ones I mentioned before, the overlay, the camera, and the world space. Okay, so I'm going to right click. I'm just going to create a cube. Okay. Well, yeah, it's not showing up because there's like no world in this one. But I'm going to show you an example of something real quick here. So we can create canvas with text here. Like we can see it. Okay. And then I create a 3D object in a cube. Oh, not a good idea because I'm on. Oh, that would help. So even if I have this cube here, it can be seen in here. Should have our text somewhere around here. Oh yeah. Again, gets a little wonky with 3D stuff, especially when you make it after the fact. The main thing I wanted to point out was that the cube won't show up on your UI elements. It's only for 2D sprites and that kind of stuff. It's not going to show any 2D rendered objects. So. Scale with screen size. I don't know why this is so flippin' huge. Can't even see it in the preview. Display. Sorry, this didn't happen to me last time. Not sure why this element is so huge. Definitely does see it. Maybe that is just the physical screen space that it's showing. Okay, that kind of leads me to the next thing that you want to check in your build settings when you're dealing with UI. Is your resolution and presentation. Depending on what you're developing for, the one that you want to look for is coordinate aspect ratios. So you can support whatever you want. I mean, obviously, but you might run into some issues, you know, for very like 4:3 is like a standard like lo-fi television, right? So that might not look as good as if you've optimized it for 16:9, which is, you know, your typical computer monitor aspect ratio. So you can support it, but also, you know, you have to make sure that your UI scales and everything to those if you choose to do that. But this is just a good way, in the settings to select which aspect ratios that you want to support for your game. And once you do that, once you have these set up, so I'm going to go ahead and just put it to 16:9. So in the game, well, I don't think I actually saved it. I did. Interesting. In the game, you can select which one you see, well, in game. So that's a good thing to keep in mind, because things could happen with background images and stuff that you don't want, and that could be a big thing about it, is the aspect ratio. And then you go into the UI scale mode for your canvas, and that it also affects how your images are shown. So you can scale with the screen size, a constant physical size, or pixel size. So the screen size, you have a reference resolution, you know, higher resolution for higher pictures, that kind of stuff. So again, these are things to mess with if you're getting weird UI like scaling issues. Typically, just go with screen size. That usually works for me, but again, it depends on what you have going on in your UI. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and create a little menu here. I might go ahead and remove this for right now. And UI. I'm going to create a panel. I need to back up a bit. Oh, maybe not. So background image would be good if I had one. I don't think I do, though. Like that, maybe. Again, you can make this as nice as you want. I'm just messing around for the purposes of making this menu. Let's see. A good thing to get for UI is something called Text Mesh Pro. So if you go to the Assets store, just type it in. This is something that Unity actually acquired, which I think it's already in there, isn't it? Thought I saw it. Yeah, I already have a version of it already installed in here. But yeah, if you don't have it, you can go to the asset store and download it. It's much more robust than the traditional UI that Unity comes with. So once you have that, I'm going to go to UI. I'm going to create Text Mesh Pro. Oh, Sam, I guess I didn't have it. Okay. up the text, or anchor preset. This is good to change the anchor point of the text, which I believe should be down at the bottom there. Actually, I don't think I need to mess with that anchor at all. But yeah, you can see that there's actually a lot of settings that you can mess around with TextMesh Pro. They make it pretty simple to use, center it up. Bolding, they have a whole bunch of fonts. Well, actually, I guess you have to download them. But they make things pretty straightforward. There was one setting I was looking for. Oh. Yeah, underlay. Underlay is good if you're having issues with your text being fuzzy. It's again, you can mess with all of these and see the different effects on it. But let's see. And then there should be yeah. I'll let you guys mess around with that. But I mean, pretty much it's just messing around with fonts. So. All right, so in our canvas, I'm going to make a UI button. And then I'm going to make that black. And I'm actually going to disable the image. And then am I blind? I don't see the should be a way to remove the text. I'm going crazy. For some reason, it's not allowing me. Oh, maybe it's the material. No, it's not even the material. You should be able to add this text on to this button. I'm not even sure there's 2 on there. This is under the transition. Oh, maybe. Sorry, guys. Give me 1 second. I'm not sure where this setting is. Figured it out. So essentially, you have to parent the this text box to that button, and then line it up. I was wondering why there was 2. I guess I didn't hit the drop down. So now that you run this, this will take over the button. Now it won't do anything because we haven't set any parameters to change visually or programmatically anything. So what we can do is put a button. So normal color. Put that all the way down. Put the alpha down to 0. Highlighted. Give it like a little bit more. And then press. Yeah, we want it to go all the way down. So and of course it's not showing up. Oh, maybe because I have to re-enable the image. Give that a shot. Yeah, so you can see that it changes color when you highlight it. And press it. Okay, I'm going to change the name of this to play. I'm going to go ahead and duplicate this button. Rename that. Duplicate again. So now we have 3 buttons: play, options, and quit. I'm going to go ahead and create an empty object and rename this menu. Oh, I'm sorry. This is actually type. Okay, so we have the basic layout. And so now we're going to create a script to get some of this stuff going. So create new script. And we're going to call this new. Okay, we can remove all this because we're not going to be doing anything at the start or update. First, we're going to do function play game. And before we type anything out, we need to get Unity Engine the scene management. All right. And this is something that we covered a little bit when we were doing transitions on collision. Kind of the same principle where we're going to say scene manager that load scene. Get the active scene, build index, which is the index that we set in our build settings, and we're going to add 1 to it. So essentially this says whatever the index is now, just add 1 to it and load that scene. So essentially we're loading the next scene in our game. And then also do a function called game. We have this, it's pretty simple. All you do is application.quit and the whole thing will shut down. But in the Unity editor, it won't see anything happen. So you can just do a debug.log. Make sure that it's hitting. Okay, so we got our 2 functions here. So we're going to go back into Unity. Okay, so on this play button, we have this on-click event box here. And essentially what you can do is add different functions depending on when it's clicked. So first you need to add an object to it, which is the main menu object. And then the function that you want should be it'd probably help if I added the script to main menu. main menu, yeah, play game. So yeah, just go down here, main menu, play game, and that's the function that we created. So you run this, hit play, boom, it goes into our next scene. And we do something similar with the quit. Every main menu object, put it in this onClick event, and then go down to the function quit game. Say it down in the bottom left, quit. But for options, we want to do something different, right? So I'm gonna believe I have to set up a new panel for this, if I'm correct. And then yeah, see, can't turn off the canvas. Yeah, it has to be in this panel. Options there. Oh, I think that's what it is. It's a new game object called. And then again, this takes a lot of setting up before you really do much. Just creating a text box for volume. I'm gonna go to UI, slider. think this needs to be on its own canvas. And then I'm going to duplicate this, bring it down into my canvas. So go back to this here and go back to our options. And we have this click event here. So we're going to add one. I believe this goes here, and then game object set active. Then you're going to add again your main menu, game object set active, but you're going to uncheck it. So let's give this a shot. Oh, it did it, but I don't think my canvas is set up correctly. I think it's just going to show all of it at this point. Oh, these don't need to be parented panel. They need to be outside. Let me just remove these. Try creating them again. in there. Options will pop up here. Volume. Okay, 4. I'm actually going to anchor it to. Actually, here. Do that. UI slider. Bring that down. Boom. So we were actually able to change over to the other one without actually doing any programming for the options due to this on-click event where you can add what element you want to affect and then whatever function that you need to use on it. So that becomes pretty handy. So we'll do the same thing with the background. Disable this, re-enable this. Oh, that's because I copied it. I was like, why does that have quit on it? So we want, instead of quit, we want to set active the main menu. And then we grab the options menu object, game object, set active, uncheck it. Give that a shot. Oh, because I had this first. And now we have a little slidey bar. It doesn't do anything right now. It's just a bar. Okay. So I'm going to get into how to use the volume thing because that seems like a little fun scripts to work on. Real quick, I gotta get some royalty-free music or just anything. If you don't already know, Incomtech.com. Again, I don't know why it's called that, but all of this music is royalty-free. You just have to give credit to it, and it's by Kevin MacLeod, who's actually pretty known around the game industry for like default music or good quality music that you can use in your games. So I'm just gonna grab something here. Okay, that sounds fine. I'm actually gonna throw that in. Now I'm going to create an empty game object. reference player. And then I'm going to create an audio source. So I believe once this runs, don't know if you guys can hear that. Maybe you do. But anyway, music's playing. I think it's just because I'm not sharing my audio. Audio settings. Well, for right now, trust me, it's working. Gosh, I know I should check this before getting started. Oh, share computer sound. Maybe that'll work. Okay. How about now? Yeah, woke everyone up. Okay, so right now it just plays, right? So first, the slider, we want it up initially, right? So you just go down here, value, you just put it to 1, right? You can set the minimum maximum value from 0 to 1. Just put it to 1. All right, so from here, we're gonna go scripts, create a new script. We are going to call it volume value change. Add up. Generic. Yep. Oh, I'm sorry, this is wrong one. Okay, so we need to create a reference to our audio source. And then we're going to create a float that holds our music volume. It's 1F because, like we said, 1 is max, right? So at the start, we're going to assign the audio source variable to our audio source in the game. And then here in the update, we are going to say audio source dot volume music volume. And now we're going to set up a function that we can call change that value. Make sure set volume. Yeah, volume. Cool. Okay, we'll go back in here. I'm going that script to the music player. We go to our slider. And then add our music player. Believe game object. Oh, I put the wrong script on there. I was like, why am I saying health collectible? To music player, right? Okay, so it has that. Go to slider. There we go. And then set volume. Of course, it's not working. Oh, that's, yeah, an ad. That's exactly what I did. I'll mess around with that, but that is essentially how you set that up. There's no audio source attached to the music player. There is. Oh, maybe I need to do it that way. There we go. So now the volume gets lower, and you can see it's actually setting it in our audio source every time I move the slider back and forth. And again, rather than making the source control a game object, you actually have to make it part of this game object as a component. So that's why I wasn't able to see it. Any questions about that? Okay. Let's go ahead and take about like a 10-minute break. I'll see if I can get inventory set up on this. Alrighty. So meet back. The clock is wrong. I'll say 6:55. Alrighty, hope everyone's back. So again, this one's kind of tough to set up, but I'll try to go through it here. So we're actually we're in this main games scene here, and so what I've done is I've created a canvas right here. This is actually the screen space. So in the game, this inventory will be shown on the left side of the space that you put it in here. So then after I've created this canvas, there is a panel that's called inventory, which is essentially the bounding box for your inventory system. I believe I have that right. Yeah. So yeah, this inventory is pretty much a container for another panel that has your background added to it. So once we get here, I'll remove this. So now we actually have to create the individual item icons. So once again, we create another panel. Let's go ahead and in this inventory slot. And with this inventory slot, we're going to give it an image. I just have like these very basic ones here. Throw that in. Probably just easier to scale it this way. Sorry, I know these are kind of wonky colors, but to show you the differentiation in the different containers here. Okay. And within this, we want to create a button so that we can click on the inventory item. So I'm going to go to UI. Oh, I'm sorry, hold on. Nope, that's not what you did. So in your inventory slot here, you want to add a button component to this, so that this item is actually clickable. And then for navigation, you want to switch that to none. Okay. We're also going to add a button that allows you to close this slot. So we're going to create an empty game object here. Sorry, just checking my notes here. Inventory systems get confusing because there's so many panels and stuff that are parented with one another. Yeah, so we're actually going to unparent this game object here. Rename this item button. Rename this inventory slot. Actually parent this to that. So this is an empty game object that has this panel associated with it that has a button. And then we're going to give this its own button. Reason you do that is because if we had this game object parent of the item button, you wouldn't actually be able to click it because the entire inventory slot was a button already. And then within this inventory slot, we're going to create another image. Again, this does not look good, but in this image, we're going to throw on this guy. This is essentially our close button. We'll give that a button as well. So just so that you see it, this is a container for our inventory. The blue is an inventory slot, and then the yellow would be an X button to close that inventory slot. Okay, so being that we have this inventory slot here, we're going to go ahead and make that a prefab so that we can make more of these hideous inventory slots. And then we're going to make a whole bunch. This C Control V for a whole bunch of different slots.
Can I ask a quick question?
Yeah.
So I'm working on a game right now that does with the inventory, but it has like a book. So I got like how you can pick up items and put them into an inventory system.
Hmm.
Here's my question though. Say you have two characters inside the game and they're talking to each other with text. And one of the text like line that says, "Hey, like whatever," like that's an important line. How do you get that to show up in the inventory?
Show what exactly?
Like say you have two characters talking, like an NPC and your main character,
Mhm.
and the NPC says something that is important, and you need to put it into an inventory, kind of like a detective game.
I see. Uh, hmm.
Because I got items.
Right. You can, I guess, essentially create like almost an empty game object, which would have your item class to it, and then you would throw that in your inventory once that event has happened. Right. Typically, with those kind of games, they have a window that pops up that says this is important. You hit OK, and then I guess once that happens, then you can create a game object of piece of information and store that into your inventory.
Like, can you create that while you're reading the text, or do you have to pause the text?
Usually, I mean, yeah, you probably have to get to a stopping point, but say this is important, or if you can click on the screen, like if it's if the text is blue or something, you can probably just make a button out of whatever text item that pops up, and then you have that item.
Okay, so make the text an item.
Yeah, so you would uh, depending on how you're doing your text, I guess you can have that line or multiple lines be um, a text object, and then parented underneath of it could be a button. So if the player clicks on that specific line, then you can have an event where an object is created and then put into your inventory,
Okay.
if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. I just gotta talk to the person who's making the text script.
Okay.
All right, thanks.
Yep, no problem. So so once we have these inventory slots, we're going to add a grid component. Oh, hold on. I don't think it's grid layout group, I believe. Hmm. It's supposed to be gridding them out. I'm not sure why it's not. It should be able to just grid them out for you. I'm not sure why. They aren't. Yeah, this is why UI is a pain. Yeah, it's moving around. It's very odd. Usually I can't stop to get moving around. So, in the meantime, I'm just gonna throw these one like that. Not the prettiest, but again, with scaling and stuff, you can fix it the way that you need to. Typically, the grid layout group allows you to make the changes necessary in order to shrink it down. Okay, so now we're going to start plugging in some stuff here. I have this inventory UI, which we'll get into. This is going to be applied to the entire canvas, but let's just take a look at and see what's under this. So you have we have a transform items parent, which is the object of all of the items in your inventory. And then the inventory UI, which is the entire UI set. We have an inventory slot array. So if you notice, inventory slot, that's not a typical type for Unity or programming for that matter. It's a class that has been created. So if you go into inventory slot, you'll see all of the attributes that you have for each slot. So first you have an image icon, which is the icon displayed on top of that slot, and then the remove button, which is that square that we added in there. So we have a couple functions here. Add item, which essentially adds that item to the inventory. Clear slot, clears whatever's in there. On remove button, which allows you to remove an item from there. and then item.use. So there's also a class for item as well. Again, it's tough to get into this because it can get pretty hairy pretty quickly. So you have a class of item, and an item goes in your inventory, and then the inventory goes into your inventory UI. So you have multiple classes working here. And you also have the inventory slot, which goes into your UI as well. So if we look at item, just take a look at all these one at a time. So it has a name, has an icon, and is it a default where that you have. And right now the use function, all it is debug.log, and then uses whatever the name of the item is. And then you also have a function remove from inventory that removes that item from the inventory. Again, I'll have all of these classes in the project folder so you guys can take a look at it. Oh my goodness. Virtual void. Yeah, I'm not sure. I never used virtual void. Interesting. I'll have to get back on that one. I'm not sure what virtual is used for. I mean, it's used to be overridden a derived class, but I'm not sure what it's overriding because it's only an item. I mean, maybe it's from the scriptable object class from Unity. Maybe that has a function already declared in that, and we're overriding it with virtual. That would be my best guess. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and add the inventory slot script onto this one. Jeez. Yes. One second here. Sorry, I'm just trying to figure out how to apply to all prefab. I used to have a button that did it. I can't seem to find where that button is. dragging it down. No, it doesn't either. Anyone can find out the shortcut for applying this to all prefabs, that would be great. You could, I mean, I feel like there is a better way to do it than just doing that, because if you make another inventory slot, then it's not going to. Oh, wait a minute. Maybe that's it. Yeah, I believe you just have to open it, make your changes, save it, and then back out. So I believe we went over briefly what the inventory slot has in it. Yeah, clear slot, on remove button, and use item. So let's see here. I believe we need to give that the items. This is better to deal with 3D objects than 2D, because I don't think it likes sprites. It still doesn't like a game object either. Project settings. Yeah, I'm sorry about this, guys. I thought I had this set up, but it's all. There's a lot of different things you have to set up for this. I'm gonna go ahead and finish this up off camera, and then I'll have the whole project good to go on Sakai, so you guys can take a look at it. But that's essentially how you at least set up the inventory slot system, by creating a canvas that has an inventory, and then essentially you're creating different panels that have different attributes, along with having buttons where you can click either the item button or the image, and giving that kind of stuff functionality. So I'd suggest kind of playing with it on your own to see how all of the scaling and stuff works, because I feel like it's easier just to kind of get your hands on it than seeing me muddle around with the UI stuff. And take a look at the different classes for items and inventory slots and stuff. But yeah, I'm gonna end the lecture there. But again, I'll be here till 8 o'clock to answer any questions. Real quick, I'm gonna see if anybody on the roster is here that I missed. I still don't have Muhammad. I don't have Jose Camareri. Bryant. I don't see here. Nate, I don't see here either. Sean, I don't see. Jose Martinez, I don't see. Steven, I don't see. So everybody else is good. If you heard your name, just yell at me and I'll mark you here. So, all right, everybody. Have a good night. I'll see you next week. Like I said, we're gonna do a little show and tell of what you guys have been working on. I want to see something in Unity. Doesn't have to be crazy. I know your schedules are all over the place, but I just want to see something in the works, some sort of plan. So, alrighty, everyone have a good night.
Andy, can you hear me?
Yeah. Yeah, if you could turn it up, that would be good.
Let me see if I can figure out how to do that.